All right. Well, good morning, Pam. We're here with you. We're going to discuss some of your books. We're here with In Between the Lines, and we are going to interview Pam today. Can you introduce yourself to the viewers and maybe your books here?
Yes, my name is Pamela Drapala. My family's been here since 1856. Our original family is the Higuera family. I was born in the 1950s, and I could not read as a child. I had a very hard time. I did a lot of art, but I don't think I really was paying attention to what was going on in school. My book over here is called The Strong Woman Anthology, and it is art of women all over the world. The one that I'm most proud of is my Yuma Farm Worker book, because I love fruits and vegetables, and I'm so happy that the farm workers are here to be able to provide those for us. This one here is a Frida Kahlo, and I did that one winter. I was going to have a art show, and my professor Blomquist had asked me if I would please create at least 20 drawings, which I did, that I later on made into a book. And my last book on the end is Goodnight Universe, and I wrote it. I wanted to make sure that I would know how to make a children's book at one point in my life, and I wrote about how it was for me when I was a child and when I would be dreaming.
And something very interesting that you were bringing up when we were talking is that you always were kind of bothered by not being able to follow what you consider always your dream. Like, you always knew that you wanted to do something with arts. Maybe you didn't know exactly what, but you were pushed in the other direction. Is that correct?
That is correct. At AWC, a long time ago in the 1970s, you had to bring home your paperwork and your parents had to sign the classes. I wanted to take art classes and music classes because I also sing. And my mother said, no, I don't want you to be on your feet. Commercial artists aren't available for women. That job isn't there. She said nursing, teaching, secretarial, or to be a nun. Those are the ones that are available to women. But you have to remember, my mom was born in the 1920s, and things were a lot different than they are now.
Right, and it's really fascinating, and we'll get into the women's book right now. We'll talk more about that, but it's really fascinating how that kind of influenced what you're doing now. Let's talk about your first book. Now, you mentioned this is your first book, correct?
The first one was the Frida Kahlo book.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that was published by Create Space. I did it. It took me one summer to do it. I had never made a book before with Create Space, and it took about 3 months, but I got it done. The next 3 books were a lot easier because they're done at blurb.com, and Blurb has a format that you just type into. It's very easy. It's wonderful for pictures and color, whereas Create Space didn't provide me with as good as the images as they could have been. So I definitely am for blurb.com. In fact, I have a lady who wants me to help her with her book. It is a regular novel, but she wants to have a book of pictures of her adventures in the jungle.
Okay, so are these all self-published?
Yes, they're all self-published books.
How is that experience for you, and would you recommend that if somebody's starting to write?
For Yuma being a very small town, it worked really well. Previously, when I was writing poetry, I would submit it to different places, and I would also submit my short stories. I am published in a few magazines. I have won Cash Awards, Shoe Magazine, La Herencia Magazine, also, I can't think of a New York magazine called Awareness have published my work. When I received my first paycheck, I'm checked for my short story. I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed that anyone would buy a short story from me. And I would have thought maybe it would have been for, maybe $20 or something. They paid me very nicely. And then they contacted me later and they wanted more information because they made a special edition just for the subject matter that I had written on.
Speaking of being surprised by what people, find or they're interested, you mentioned that you were surprised when your mother was really proud of you when you made the Frida book, right?
It was the farm workers book. She was really proud when I had sold my paintings to a packing house in Yuma, Arizona, and now the paintings, they are in the boardroom.
And you're right, it was a different time. You had a timeline, you have to be a mother, you have to work, and it was very strict. And now, when she saw that maybe you did follow your dream and you did achieve probably more than what she expected you, and that had an effect on you, right? That had
Yes, it really did. I think I'll always remember that when she said, "I'm proud of you." I would have thought that she would have said it when I got married,
right,
or when we had children, or when we bought our first house, or was employed by a.
Because those are the socially expected roles that you're
Exactly.
Now, do you think that influence and that experience since your childhood influenced you in some way to write the women's empowerment book?
I would say so, because this morning I went through, in my current book that I'm writing right now, it's about painting, poetry, and prose. And in reference to that, I found 2 binders with a lot of writings I had done in the past about that type of thing, about growing up, about life in general. I guess in the beginning I was angry, and I wrote a lot of poetry and I destroyed it. Then I got that out of my system, and then I started writing this other stuff, and I said, wow, that was probably a good thing, because it was like I was being cleansed of my anger. But I didn't stop. When the girls were old enough, I started taking classes at NAU Yuma. At our class, I took some writing classes at AWC. And then finally, it was around 2010 when a counselor called me at home and said, "Pam, you need to come in to NAU Yuma because we need to go over all your classes." And she said, "I went over all your papers. All you're lacking is one computer class, a math class, and then a language class, and you can graduate from NAU Yuma." And I was so surprised, because I guess all those classes I had been taking, and also my associate's degree with that, equaled a bachelor's degree. And I just was so in shock, because I never imagined a child that's deep inside me, who couldn't read and write, was actually getting a degree in liberal arts, in English and in art.
No, that's
Yes.
It's an accomplishment, yeah. I do want to talk about something very interesting that you mentioned when we were talking before. The book that you have, the international book, you mentioned something very interesting, that in a way the Me Too movement kind of influenced you in a way to have a voice. Can you explain a little bit what you were talking to me about that?
Yes, like I said before, I love men. My husband's a man. I have uncles, grandfathers, brothers, cousins, nephews, etc., that are men. However, there are some things that I find that were not equal. Like, for instance, the art field. When you go into a library or you go to a museum or gallery, you will find there are about 85% of men in the art field, and women are not noticed at all. I belong to the Women's Museum in Washington, D.C., and I recently got my name put on the rolls. I was very excited about that. And I truly believe that with the Me Too movement, this would be my opportunity, 2018, to have women from all over the world a place to shine and to show themselves. And I put out a call to artists, and I was so surprised. I was able to get artists from Canada, Brazil, Singapore, Poland, the United States, Spain, etc., to participate in the book. And I was just thrilled. The reason why I have the water lilies in front is because I wanted to have something that I didn't want one artist to outshine the other artist. So what I did was I picked a flower that had the meaning that would project something important. Water lilies means new life, new birth. And I thought, what a wonderful theme for this time. And these water lilies are from San Diego, and I just used my camera and I made them look like a painting, but they are a photograph.
That's actually a really interesting point that you make. You mentioned that when you reached out to them, they felt the same way that you did in different parts of the world.
Yes.
Even here in the United States, especially now, recently, we have some women senators who have brought up the subject that they want equal pay.
Exactly.
Because women get paid about 80 cents on the dollar for an average.
That's
so this movement has brought, other than sexual harassment, has brought up other issues.
Yes.
And one thing that you mentioned about the 85% is art is from men, is, in my opinion, is that sometimes young women don't have reassurance. They're not told, yes, this is good. It's a lack of.
Yes. Yes. There's another reason why also. We went to the Legion of Merit in San Francisco's museum, and they had the women showing there. And I would read the paintings, and they would say, so-and-so was an artist from this time to this time. And I said, well, what were her other paintings? And they'd say, she got married and she had babies. And that was the end of it. We are so lucky, the women who are born during my time now, because we have washers, we have dryers, we have butter,
All right, so yeah, you're right. Women do have more available time than, like you mentioned before. You have these other chores that you have to do. One thing that I do want to talk about in your Frida book.
Okay.
You mentioned something very interesting that happened in Seattle.
Yes.
So you saw a book in Seattle and it had Frida, right?
Yes.
And somehow you felt like it was calling you, like it was for some reason reaching out to you. Is that correct?
Exactly, I felt that.
And you didn't understand that at the time, but later you found out that you have some kind of connection with.
Yes, a natural connection.
You want to tell us about it? Because I found that very interesting.
Yes. I saw the book in Seattle, and I purchased it, and I think I purchased Diego's book then too. And I was amazed at this woman that I had not even heard of in all my life. I had known about Georgia O'Keeffe, and I knew about other artists, but nothing about Frida. And little did I know that in 1990 she was barely even being noticed by the general public. So I went ahead, anything I could get my hands across, my hands on, like a book, magazine, whatever, I purchased. And my brother's still buying books for me, by the way, of Frida. I have a collection now. But what happened is that I wanted to do a painting of Frida so I could try out my skills on doing, a style of painting that was similar to hers. And it was raining really hard one day when I started painting it. And it was so bad that the electricity in Yuma in different parts were out for 3 days. I don't remember the year it was, to tell you the truth. So I went ahead and pulled it out again later, and I started painting on it. And I was almost done, and our two daughters said to me individually, we don't want that painting in the house. It has too much energy, and it makes us feel very uncomfortable. So I said, well, I'll go ahead and auction it off. And now I'm sad I did. But anyway, I auctioned it off. And when it was being auctioned, there was a terrific storm that happened. And it was blowing. And again, the electricity went off for a few days. And my friend, Hong DeCourse, who's a very close friend of mine, she said to me, Pam, did you notice that? She noticed it before I did. She brought it up before I did. So I still felt like Frida was still tapping on my shoulder. There was something more, and I didn't know what it was. And so I said to myself, many years later, I put Carvajal and put Kahlo into the computer. And what ends up coming up is a story of Frida Kahlo, how she had the books on the Spanish Inquisition that were done on Luis de Carvajal's family. And he's my ancestor. His spelled the same way and everything. And my uncle had told me that there were books out there on the Inquisition about our relatives before I knew about the Frida thing. So that just, you know, verified what I had found out.
And just to clarify, he was tortured, right?
He was tortured, and Frida used those images as examples to put in her book. Like, for instance, there's the one where she has a funnel up,
Right.
and there's oil being poured down. Well, that's what they did to my family.
That I found that very, you know.
Yes, it's very sad. And he ended up dying in his cell. And then later on, it was trying to think, in the 1990s, my uncle contacted me and said they were having an opera on Luis de Carvajal in San Diego, and I wanted him to go with me, but he couldn't. So my friend and I and the girls went to see it, and I could not believe that they had my ancestors' life story right up there at the opera house,
Right.
you know, where the man sang. And so I verified it again. A lady either contacted me or I contacted the lady in Boston. She's a doctor. She just writes on Jewish heritage, exactly. And she's in Boston, and we discussed that and everything like that, and she gave me more information. So that's the story.
I found that I found that very interesting.
And later on, I decided to do a book.
With the book and with your child's story that you mentioned, you did have an advice for young writers, especially women writers, right? You want them to follow what they think they should do.
I think all women, all children, boys and girls, that they should follow their heart's desire. Because if you do what you really like to do, the money's going to follow. I mean, even with me just doing the farm worker books, I mean, I was in awe because I had a show in New York City in Soho, and the director had given me advice, and I had asked her, what do you think my paintings are worth? And she gave me a certain amount of money. So when I came to Yuma and I sat down with the business owner, we discussed the amount, and I told him, I said, this isn't New York City, so why don't we just cut that amount in half, and we can start there on negotiating the price for the paintings. If I would have never have had my show in New York City,
You would have never known.
I would have never known, because before this, and my daughter told me this, Mom, I liked you so much better when you used to give your paintings away. You know, because I would see someone's face, take a picture, and I'd do a painting, and I'd say, this is a gift to you. And I do this all the time, right?
Right.
But then I found out that my paintings were valuable, and I stopped doing that. My first painting that, I had drawings that people had commissioned me to do, but my first painting that I sold was
The actual farmers.
the farm workers.
Okay.
Yes, and then I felt that I was the same person. I hadn't changed, but I had been recognized. That if anything, if I were to be gone tomorrow, I've already done what I wanted to do.
You left your mark.
I left my mark because my mother had told me, Pam, nobody has recognized the farm workers at all until you started painting them, and now they're everywhere. In fact, there was a man who had done the farm workers as large as, the walls were as big as this, and he put them in big galleries. And his name, I believe, is Joe Cohen. I think that's what his name is. And he said, I'm going to put out a book. But he had all these different philanthropic organizations that were behind him, like Carnegie,
Mm-hmm.
and all these, I can't think of them right now, all the names. And they were assisting him, besides Beggs. I had no one to assist me, and I said, I'm going to get my book out before him. And I did.
Yeah.
I don't think he's published his book yet.
Something interesting about the farm workers with Frida is that Diego Rivera
Yes.
had done murals in the 1930s
Yes,
with the
yes.
farm workers.
Yes, definitely.
Some were stigmatized and covered up, especially like in downtown LA. They were not rediscovered until the 80s. So
how sad.
the farm worker, it was never really a popular thing. Like you mentioned, it's not really.
But how can you not be popular if you're feeding us? You're feeding
Right.
human beings. I mean, can you imagine how boring life would be with only carbohydrates? You know what I mean? And no fruits and vegetables.
So that's important that you're bringing up, you're bringing this up.
Well, I mean, I've loved vegetables and fruits since I was a child. In fact, one time when I was younger, I got lost in a berry bush. Nobody knew where I was. And my sweater got stuck to all the thorns, so that's how they found me. And I had berry juice all over my face. So this just gives you an indication how much I like fruits and vegetables.
Now, one last thing that we want to ask. Now, this book that you have coming with poetry,
yes.
When do we expect that to be out or released?
I'm very close now. My goal is to have it done before summer or sooner. And the reason why is because there are a lot of good tips in there for writers, for poetry, and also for tips on other things besides, like for instance, advertising your work. The reason why I'm doing this is because I had so many mentors in my life that weren't artists who said, Pam, you need to make a book out of your paintings, And I was thinking, well, what am I going to write? Or I had someone come up to me and say, you really should do a series on this, Or I'm giving back. And I was very lucky. I had very supportive supervisors and friends all the way back to elementary school. Even today I have mentors who take me under their wing, who's encouraged me in doing what I'm doing. And I'm very blessed that way because I know that not everybody has someone looking out for them. But I really feel that when my dad passed away when I was 8 years old, that he's been with me to help me get through these times because there was one year that it was Father's Day, which is coming up pretty soon, and I was really upset because I didn't have my father to celebrate Father's Day with. I was very distraught, and angry. And that night when I went to bed, my dad appeared in my dream, and it could have been my subconscious trying to make me feel better, or it could have really been my dad, and I would like to believe it was my dad telling me that he will always love me, and he will always support me, and he'll always be there for me. And that is a gift I will never forget or lose. Even though from the time I was 8 until present time I haven't been with my dad, I figured out on May the 10th was the day of his passing and my brother's birthday. And I was 8 years old, so I figure it's been like 53 years since my dad's been gone.
Well, shouldn't, hasn't been forgotten.
No, he has not been forgotten.
And it's good to hear that he's been with you. And we're with you. We would love to have you back.
Thank you so much.
Especially when you finish that book so we can talk about it.
Okay, that's great.
I do believe that art and poetry is always, intertwined in some way.
Exactly.
So we'd love to talk about that book when you have that ready. And thank you for sharing your time with us. And
may I close with a poem?
Sure.
Okay, excuse me. I'm going to get one of these. It's very short. Strong women. We are strong women, women like you and me, from every country, from every creed. We are strong women, full of passion, love, artistic gifts. We are daughters, sisters, mothers. We are strong women, the foundation of every nation, giving hope, compassion, and strength. We are strong women, as God meant us to be. We are the core of the family. We are strong women. Our works will persevere with our strength and our tenacity.
Thank you. And we'll love to have you back, and thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.